You're watching Gi-Hun sprint toward the finish line in red light, green light, when suddenly he trips and falls. The giant doll's head swivels, its mechanical eyes lock onto him, and for a split second, you can see it, death coming straight at him. But then, out of nowhere, a hand reaches out. That hand belonged to player 199, Ali, and it literally snatched Gi-Hun from death's grasp. This moment marked the first of 10 instances where our underdog protagonist survived against impossible odds. The other 9 brushes with death throughout the series push the boundaries of belief, each one more jaw-dropping than the last. Let me walk you through them. Picture this. Hundreds of terrified players frozen like statues, a giant doll's head turning with that mechanical whir, and there's Gi-Hun, our unlikely hero, sprawled on the ground at the worst possible moment. The first game of Squid Game doesn't mess around. One wrong move, one tiny flinch, when the doll's head swivels back, and you're done. Game over, permanently. That first, red light, green light game hit viewers like a freight train. 1 minute we're watching players in matching tracksuits lining up for what seems like a nostalgic children's game. The next we're witnessing a massacre. And right in the middle of this chaos is Gi-Hun, completely unprepared, stumbling and falling, when staying perfectly still means the difference between life and death. The camera work elevates this moment through specific visual choices. That extreme close-up on Gi-Hun's face captures every bead of sweat, every micro expression of panic, masterful storytelling without words. You feel his heart pounding through the screen. When the doll rotates toward the players, the frame tightens on Gi-Hun's dilated pupils and quivering limbs, creating an immediate connection between him and the audience. The vulnerability becomes visceral, transferring his terror directly to viewers. This scene establishes Gi-Hun as our everyman protagonist. He lacks the tactical intelligence of Sang-woo or the physical presence of Deok-soo. He's a regular person overwhelmed by extraordinary circumstances, reacting with unfiltered terror. While others calculate their moves, Gi-Hun remains paralyzed by the brutal reality unfolding around him. The sound design amplifies the tension through deliberate restraint. During that pivotal moment, background noise fades away, leaving only the mechanical clicking of the doll's rotation, Gi-Hun's ragged breathing, and that awful pregnant silence as death approaches. Without dramatic music or effects, the stripped-down audio creates unbearable tension. The sound engineers craft an atmosphere where Gi-Hun's fear becomes almost tangible. As the doll completes her turn, players fall to gunfire around him, and Gi-Hun remains caught in motion, exposed and vulnerable. His expression reveals the horrifying realization that execution is seconds away. This moment introduces him to the game's brutal reality, where failure means death. Just as hope evaporates, player 199, Ali, reaches out and steadies Gi-Hun mid-fall, physically anchoring him as the doll scans for movement. This split-second intervention changes everything. A stranger risking his safety to save Gi-Hun establishes one of the series' core themes. Survival sometimes depends on unexpected kindness. This interaction between Ali and Gi-Hun plants the seed for a friendship that develops throughout the competition. In a game designed to foster ruthless individualism, this compassionate act defies the underlying philosophy of the contest. Their connection forms precisely because of this shared brush with death. The moment carries particular power because it establishes the moral questions that will haunt Gi-Hun's journey. He survives not through superior skill, but because someone chose to help him. This creates a debt and connection that later games will test when allies become opponents. This first narrow escape isn't merely about surviving a deadly children's game. It marks the beginning of Gi-Hun's moral evolution. The red light, green light scene establishes that Gi-Hun's survival often depends on the thinnest threads: luck, help from others, and desperate determination. Unlike competitors who seem prepared for brutality, Gi-Hun stumbles through by narrow margins. This pattern repeats throughout the games, each near-death experience stripping away another layer of his former self, forcing him to confront his true character when everything is at stake. Surviving deadly children's games is one thing, but what happens when your fellow prisoners become the real threat? The dormitory scene gives us a terrifying answer. After being given nothing but a single egg and a cup of water for sustenance, the players' desperation transformed their supposed safe zone into a war zone where alliances meant nothing. When those lights went out, Gi-Hun discovered something even more horrifying than the game's mechanical death traps: the monsters lurking inside ordinary people pushed beyond their breaking point. The eerie silence just before the chaos tells you everything. One moment, players are huddled in exhausted clumps on the cold floor, and the next, absolute mayhem. This near-death experience differs fundamentally because the threat came from the very people Gi-Hun had been struggling alongside. The single egg meal was a calculated move by the game masters to create the perfect conditions for this explosion of violence. Picture the scene: complete darkness, disorienting shouts bouncing off concrete walls, and Gi-Hun standing weaponless as shadowy figures rush past. While others had prepared by fashioning shivs from metal pipes or broken glass, our protagonist was caught entirely flat-footed. No weapon, no strategy, not even the instinct to hide. This frozen response revealed a fundamental weakness that would endanger him throughout the games. Nearby, player 079, a former accountant who had been quietly sobbing in the corner minutes earlier, now viciously attacked his own ally with a makeshift weapon, screaming about betrayal. This transformation from ordinary citizen to desperate killer unfolded in seconds, epitomizing how quickly the veneer of civilization crumbled. The cinematography brilliantly captures both the chaos and Gi-Hun's vulnerability. The camera work becomes erratic, mirroring his panicked perspective. Quick cuts between rage-twisted faces and makeshift weapons create a suffocating sense of danger closing in from all sides, emphasizing the psychological shift from organized games to primal survival. Just as Gi-Hun sidesteps player 413 swinging a metal pipe at his skull, an even deadlier threat emerges: player 113 charging with a knife. This sequence should have ended his journey. With nowhere to run in the cramped quarters and his back against the wall, death seems inevitable as the knife arcs toward him. Sang-woo's knife intervention changes everything. His protective instinct clashes with his tactical mind, foreshadowing their future conflict. The rescue highlights their differences. Sang-woo acts decisively while Gi-Hun hesitates, yet genuine concern lingers beneath. The riot abruptly ends when Il-nam pleads for peace. Why do the players obey? The lights return, raising suspicions about his role. In the aftermath, bodies litter the floor, shattering Gi-Hun's illusions. The game forces ordinary people to their breaking points, transforming accountants, factory workers, and salesmen into killers. The real horror lies in how quickly social bonds dissolve when survival is at stake. While social bonds shattered in the darkness of the dormitory, physical strength would become the next dividing line between life and death. The tug-of-war challenge was a brutal mathematics problem where Gi-Hun's team started with a negative probability of survival. Standing on that narrow metal platform, staring across at opponents who looked like they bench-pressed bulldozers for fun, even the usually optimistic Gi-Hun must have felt his stomach drop faster than the platform eventually would. This was a calculated execution dressed up as competition. The whistle blew, and Gi-Hun's team was instantly overpowered, their feet skidding, hands burning as the rope slipped away. The mismatch was obvious against stronger opponents, their untrained muscles strained in vain. Veins bulged, knuckles whitened, but brute force would decide their fate. What made this terrifying was their interdependence. Unlike earlier games, survival hinged on the weakest link. One slip meant death for all. The edge crept closer, the abyss gaping below as their heels dangled over it. The psychological torment matched the physical agony. Each jolt forward chipped away at hope. Their bodies screamed in protest, but the inevitable pull of gravity was merciless. Just when physics and cruel fate had seemingly written their final chapter, a glimmer of something unexpected appeared. As their toes curled over the platform's edge, Il-nam, the frail old man who seemed most disadvantaged, revealed himself to be a repository of unexpected knowledge. "I've seen this game before," he shouted over the exertion. Sang-woo, the shrewd strategist, immediately transformed this insight into a tactical advantage. In that moment of clarity amid chaos, he formulated a counterattack, a synchronized three-step forward motion that would disrupt their opponent's rhythm and leverage momentum over muscle. The beauty lay in its simplicity, 3 coordinated steps forward when signaled, contradicting every instinct of a losing team. Rather than resist the pull, they momentarily surrendered to it, then used that controlled fall to create a sudden weight transfer that caught their opponents off guard. Physics weaponized, inertia transformed into advantage. The impossible became inevitable. The opposing team, confident in their physical superiority, found themselves suddenly off balance. Their formation broke, their grip weakened, and their expressions transformed from certainty to horror. The platform that had been Gi-Hun's guillotine became their gallows. As Gi-Hun watched his opponents plummet into darkness, something shifted within him. For perhaps the first time in the games, he hadn't been saved by luck or others' kindness. He had participated in a strategic victory. The man who had entered the games as a passive participant glimpsed a new possibility. That advantage isn't always visible on the surface. Victory's glow vanished as Gi-Hun faced the true horror, not brute force, but his own moral undoing. The marble game didn't test strength, it shattered souls. Across from Il-nam, he realized the cruelest weapon wasn't bullets, but forcing kindness to become cruelty just to survive. What started as a seemingly innocent childhood game quickly transformed into psychological warfare. Gi-Hun's initial confidence evaporated as Il-nam displayed an uncanny ability to guess correctly, marble after marble disappearing from Gi-Hun's palm. Each loss was a second closer to death, his life literally disappearing through his fingers. The pressure of imminent elimination crushed down on Gi-Hun like a physical weight. Il-nam's skilled play had reduced Gi-Hun's stock to just one marble, one tiny sphere standing between life and death. In that moment, something fundamentally shifted inside Gi-Hun. The desperate animal part of his brain took over, pushing aside his better nature and replacing it with something colder, more calculating. Gi-Hun had stared death in the face before, but never like this. The other games had demanded pain, fear, even blood. This one demanded his soul. Il-nam stood before him, frail and trusting, his once sharp eyes now clouded with confusion. The old man had been his shelter in this storm, the only flicker of warmth in this frozen hell. And now survival meant breaking him, not with force, but with deception, the cruelest cut of all. The alley walls pressed in like judges. There was no dramatic music here, no roaring crowd, just the quiet, suffocating weight of what he was about to do. His throat tightened as he forced out the lie. I lost my marbles. The words tasted like ash. Every instinct screamed at him to stop, but the game had rewired him. Kill or be killed had become betray or be betrayed. Il-nam's face crumpled, not in anger, but in hurt. And then, the knife twist. "We are Ganbu, aren't we?" That word, Ganbu, hung between them like a noose. More than friends, more than allies. a bond that meant everything shared, no matter what. Gi-Hun's hands shook as he took the final marble, not from a rival, from the man who'd shared food with him, laughed with him, protected him. The game hadn't just forced him to cheat, it had made him poison the one pure thing left in this nightmare. When the gunshot came, it wasn't just Il-nam who died. Something in Gi-Hun shattered too. Most devastatingly, Il-nam revealed he had known all along that Gi-Hun was tricking him, yet he chose to sacrifice himself anyway. A final act of friendship that stood in stark contrast to Gi-Hun's manipulation. This was the moment Gi-Hun survived physically, but suffered a profound wound to his soul. The camera work was relentless in its intimacy. As the guards led Gi-Hun away, the lens lingered on his face, forcing us to witness, not relief, but devastation. There was no triumphant music, no celebration, just the hollow victory of a man who saved his body but lost something more valuable. What makes this brush with death fundamentally different was that Gi-Hun became the architect of his own moral downfall. The system's true genius revealed itself. It didn't need to kill Gi-Hun, just force him to kill the best parts of himself. The question wasn't whether he would survive the game, but whether anything worth saving would remain when it was over. The games had already taken away Gi-Hun's dignity, his friends, and even pieces of his soul, but they saved the hardest test for last. Imagine fading away on a children's playground while your childhood friend approaches with harmful intent, both of you unwilling participants performing for the amusement of the powerful. This wasn't just about staying alive anymore. It was about the kind of person Gi-Hun would choose to become. The childhood playground had transformed into a cruel arena, glass panels forming a harsh outline of the Squid Game, where friendship now stood for betrayal. Sang-woo acted first, striking Gi-Hun's leg without hesitation, a red stain spreading on the shining surface. The neighborhood's golden boy was gone. Only someone driven by desperation remained. When Sang-woo rushed forward to end it, Gi-Hun did the unthinkable. He stopped the strike with his bare hands. The metal cut into his palm, but he held on. In that moment, the man who had always been losing finally stood his ground. The VIPs watching from their luxurious viewing area leaned forward as the struggle went on. After an intense confrontation, Gi-Hun gained the advantage, bringing Sang-woo to the floor. With the object now in his hand, success was just one action away. The guards stood ready. Everything the game stood for, winning at any cost, was within reach. But in that pivotal moment, with the playground glass beneath him stained with struggle, Gi-Hun hesitated. He invoked the third clause of the agreement, the one that allowed both players to walk away safely. "I won't do it," he said, voice trembling. This wasn't weakness. It was the strongest stand made throughout the entire game. Gi-Hun reclaimed his humanity from a system built to take it away, piece by piece. The frontman's expression revealed true surprise. This had never happened before. A player choosing empathy over victory, kindness over reward. Gi-Hun turned his back on the very principle of the game. He refused to become what they expected. But Sang-woo couldn't take that step with him. The weight of everything he had done, the choices, the losses, the sacrifices, had become too much to carry into life beyond the arena. "You go," he said. Before Gi-Hun could react, Sang-woo made his final choice, stepping away from the outcome he could no longer accept. The playground fell silent. The spotlights dimmed. Gi-Hun's victory came not from killing his opponent, but from refusing to do so, making him the winner by default in the cruelest irony. Blood pooled around his feet as confetti rained down in grotesque celebration. This was victory at its most hollow, survival at its most traumatic. What makes this final confrontation so devastating is what it represents. Two men who grew up together, played together on the very kind of playground they now fought on, reduced to this brutal calculus by a system that turns poverty into a spectator sport. The wealthy elite watched from behind glass, as two desperate men were forced to determine which of their lives had more value. Death isn't just something Gi-Hun avoided, it's what forged him. Through every brush with mortality, we watched him transform from a down on his luck gambler into something entirely different. The crucible of the games rewired his moral compass. What stands out is how these near-death experiences fundamentally changed him. When we see Gi-Hun with that shocking red hair turning back from his plane, we witness the phoenix rising from his own ashes. He's walking straight toward danger, driven by moral imperative to dismantle the system that exploited human desperation. Will this final evolution be his redemption or his downfall? His journey has only just begun.